Welcome back to the Devil's Rink Report, free agency edition, July 1st. And anything exciting, anything fun go on today? Listen, I know it was a long day of like, all right, we kind of knew the Hischier signing was coming. That's great, good bit of business. Some other smaller signings, the the restricted free agents, the Group Six free agents. Those guys all come back. If you were with us at New Jersey Hockey Now on the tracker, you saw little things coming through, right? We even saw a guy like Paul Cotter, go to another team, right? Paul Cotter goes to free agency. He signs with the Vancouver Canucks. Again, little things. Riley Tuft signs. Vladislav Kalichenikov. I don't know how to pronounce that actually properly. I'm gonna have to look it up. They have a little speech thing on the NHL media app. I'll get it down eventually. But another puck moving defenseman, if you will. Nico Dawes resigns, but not until the wee hours of the night when we all think, all right, all of the radio shows have packed up for the day, and maybe some of the insiders have started making their way toward the lake and or being at the beach houses for the summer and stuff like that. And then boom, all of a sudden Sonny Mehta comes out swinging with an offer sheet. Right, we heard, oh, there might be offer sheets, like we hear every year. Oh, there might be offer sheets. There might be offer sheets. We hear this every year. And all of a sudden, Sonny Mehta is now in charge of the New Jersey Devils, his first GM gig. And on day one of free agency, the first opportunity he has to actually fulfill the idea of extending an offer sheet, he does it. He says, you know what? I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make money, or I'm here to hand out money, right? I'm here to win championships. I'm here to build a roster that is going to contend. And Sonny decided and honed in on Barrett Hayton of the Utah Mammoth. He extends a 1 year offer sheet to Barrett Hayton, worth $4,775 million. So it's a 1 year deal. And there's a lot of layers to this. There's a reason why it's 1 year. And there's a reason why it's actually a realistic possibility that he pulls this off. So for starters, let's just talk about what happens if Utah doesn't match it. If Utah does not match it, all the Devils do is give up their second round pick in the upcoming draft, and they get the player for $4,775,000, which is a pretty good cap hit for Barrett Hayton, and we'll talk about why. Um, Now Utah has 7 days to decide whether or not they're going to match the offer sheet. As it stands, right? Because the money's not against the Devils' cap right now, but it looks like it is right now. If this does go through, if it sticks, Barrett Hayton's 4.775 million gives the Devils $7,777,500 left to work with in free agency. Right now, day one is over. The maybe the frenzy is gone. We'll see what the rest of the summer brings. I mean, there's a lot of big name players still on the board, a lot of big name guys who haven't made decisions yet on what they're going to do in terms of free agents. And when I say big names, I mean like the top guys, right? And then, there is also this speculation about some of these other top guys who are on the trade market who have not been moved yet. We know Zach Werenski's off the board. He came out with that statement with the Blue Jackets. It looks like he's going to stay. But Jason Robertson, Connor Hellebuck, what are these guys going to do? We're not sure yet. We're going to find out. But Sonny Mehta identifies his man as Barrett Hayton, giving the Devils, if this sticks, about let's call it $7.8 million left to work with in free agency. So he doesn't really pick up any, premium free agents, if you will. Again, not really many to pick from in this free agent class anyway. But again, he gets a little bit of business done. Mark McLaughlin's back. Xavier Perrant is back. Nico Dawes is back. Of course, Nico Hischier is back in a big way. Paul Cotter's gone, and then again, Tuft and Kalia Chanuk is a New Jersey Devil now as well. So those are both 1 year, one-way contracts. So we talked about, again, that's what happens on the Devil side, right? If they pull this off, about 7.8 million left in cap space, and they give up their second round pick in the 2027 NHL draft. Now, here's why this is realistic that they do pull this off on the Utah side of things, right? You got to zoom the lens in and look at what they did today and the ramifications against their salary cap right now. So he is, if I'm not mistaken, their only restricted free agent left on the board currently. Yes, that is true. Barrett Hayton is their only restricted free agent right now. The team elected arbitration with Barrett Hayton. He did not, right? There is player elected arbitration. That would have meant that there would not have been the opportunity for an offer sheet if Barrett Hayton elected for arbitration. Instead, it is the team that elected for it, which opened the opportunity for an offer sheet to happen. Um, so here's the deal. They have about $4.7 million left in cap space, the Utah Mammoth. They just acquired Justin Trocheck from the New York Rangers for a big haul, right? They gave up Sean Dursey, one of their former first round picks in a recent draft, and I think another draft pick as well. They also just signed Anders Lee, no longer with the New York Islanders, to a pretty big cap hit, $5.4 million for the next 3 years. So both Trocheck and Anders Lee for the next 3 years are taking up just about $11 million. Then you look down the middle. Who do the Utah Mammoth have? Because Barrett Hayton is a center. He spent about 98% of his time playing center last year for the Mammoth. So unjustifiably, he is a, or sorry, undoubtedly, he is a center. I saw some people saying, "Oh, he played wing," maybe here and there, but he's a center through and through. But down the middle, right? They have Nick Schmaltz, $8 million. Logan Cooley's $10 million deal kicked in today. Then they have Jack McBain, who is a center. They have Kevin Stenlund, who is a center. They have Kevin Rooney for depth purposes. I think he might be a free agent at yeah, he went to free agency. But again, they have the centers here to fulfill the four lines. Um, if they match the offer sheet, the fact of the matter is they're actually going to have to clear a little bit of room, right? The Devils put the Mammoth in a little bit of a bind. But the ultimate poison here for the Utah Mammoth is the fact that, well, if they do accept or match the offer that the Devils proposed, they cannot trade Barrett Hayton for 1 year, which means that they will have no choice unless they decide they want to re-sign Barrett Hayton, but to let him walk to unrestricted free agency on July 1, 2027, 1 year from today. So again, you think about, the things that Sonny Mehta said at his introductory press conference, the things that he wanted to do. He wanted to make smart, calculated decisions. Well, I mean, you look at the decision he just made. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, that's an easy match. That's an easy match." I like on the surface, yeah, it looks like one, right? Oh, 4.7, almost $4.8 million. Not that much. They should do that, right? Barrett Hayton's a pretty good player. No, no, no. They don't really have a lot of money left to get this done. I mean, again, they acquired who they acquired today. Um, the only player on their roster right now that needs a contract would be Barrett Hayton. And other than that, I mean, their goaltending is set with Kosa and Vmelka. They have their seven defensemen, and without Barrett Hayton, yeah, I mean, that's their only player that they have to figure out. So this is a bit of a bind for the Utah Mammoth, and it really could work in the Devils' favor. I mean, this was a very calculated, and it shouldn't come as a surprise. Sonny Mehta said this is exactly what he was going to do. This is a very, very calculated decision. So, um, I just want to go over what some of these market value comparisons say. So, there's a bunch of different models out there. You have Dom Luchessen's model. There's a, I'm new to Off the Rush. Their models are pretty good as well. And then there's AFP Analytics, their models, right? So the number for the Devils, if they sign, or if they are able to sign him officially, Barrett Hayton is $4.775 million, right? So the comps out there, the market value per Dom Luchesson of the Athletic, he's a $5.7 million player. Per Off the Rush, he's a $4.69 million player. And per AFP Analytics, he's a $5.375 million player. So, again, right there in terms of his market value is where is what Sonny Made offered, and just over the amount of money that the Utah Mammoth have left to make this happen. So, again, if the Mammoth want to keep Barrett Hayton, I mean, they're going to have to make some moves here. They got 7 days to do it. But certainly, Sonny Mehta has put them in a position that handcuffs them a little bit. They're going to have to figure that out. Are they going to perhaps, I don't know, looking at some of their 1 year players left, Lawson Krause, will they move him for $4.3 million? Kevin Stenlund, will they move him for 2.75? Liam O'Brien for $1 million. Like these are options for them to move, but it's up to them if they want to do it, right? Do they see Barrett Hayton? Do they want to ensure that they can take him for 1 more year, assess if they want to sign him long term, or are they going to just let him walk, accept the second round pick compensation, and the Devils suddenly have a center core of Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Barrett Hayton, and Cody Glass? That's pretty good. I mean, I've seen worse center depths in my day. I mean, I would argue that's probably some of the best center depth that they've had since I've covered the Devils in my 5 seasons now. I mean, that's really good depth. Um, Not to mention Evan Rodriguez can play center. Um, Nick Bukestad is still here. We'll see if that sticks. Jesper Boquist is here again, by the way. So like the center depth is looking real nice, and if Barrett Hayton comes in, it's looking even better. So and the last thing I'll say about this, and then we'll get to some of your comments on this because it's been look, this isn't the biggest move out there, right? It's the first offer sheet in Devils franchise history. That's pretty interesting. It's also the first offer sheet since the St. Louis Blues pulled off the shocker that was Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg. I believe that's 2 summers ago now. So again, Sonny Mehta comes into this summer making noise, taking swings, and it's not the biggest swing, but it is no less a swing. It's a bold move because he's not making a friend by doing this. He's making an enemy. Now, the rumor is that the Devils and the Mammoth have had a deal in place for Barrett Hayton on the draft floor last Friday. I haven't confirmed that. That's per Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects. He's pretty good. So I have reason to believe that that's true. I'm not disputing that. I can find out for sure. But the word is that deal fell through, and so, I mean, was Sonny made a little upset and decided, fine, you're not going to trade him to me. I'll offer sheet him. Well, that's certainly interesting, right? That's interesting, right? To know that Sonny Mehta is not worried about what they're going to do in retaliation, right? Because this is, again, we've seen this before, right? You think of the Carolina Hurricanes and the Montreal Canadiens. When the Canadiens offer sheeted Sebastian Aho, again, that's a bigger deal. And the Carolina Hurricanes wound up matching that offer sheet. However, the Hurricanes did it back and they offer sheeted Jesper Kotkaniemi, and it didn't work out in their favor in terms of the player not being as good as they thought. But at the time, they lost a player that they didn't want to lose, and were kind of forced to lose him. So you do wonder, quickly looking at who could be offer sheet eligible next summer. You have Dawson Mercer. That's spicy. Will he be a Devil past this summer? And that's really it. That there are no other restricted free agents coming up for the Devils in 2027. Um, Here's where the speculation continues to unravel a little bit, right? The fact of the matter is that the Devils still have needs. They need a goaltender. They traded Jacob Markstrom, which we have not spoken about yet, but they did. They traded Jacob Markstrom for a big haul. Evan Rodriguez, Jesper Boquist, Steves. And the other way goes Angus Crookshank with Jacob Markstrom. And, now the Devils have really good depth, right? Evan Rodriguez is a piece that can move up and down the lineup, wing, center. And again, 2-time Stanley Cup champion with the Panthers, knows Sonny Mehta real well. We spoke to him earlier today, was very complimentary of Sonny Mehta as a GM. He talks about, how thorough his thought process is and how, he is well spoken and simple enough in the sense that he's able to relay his messages easily. Um, again, the depth here is great, but you need a top six forward still, and you certainly need a goaltender. Now, the Devils did sign Nico Dawes to a 2-year extension. I don't anticipate the plan is to go into next season with an Allen Dawes tandem. I just don't know that that's going to get settled quickly. Another thing to remember that again, Sonny Mehta was part of the brain trust when this happened. The Matthew Tkachuk trade was mid-July when it happened between Calgary and Florida back in the day. Okay, so Sonny Mehta is used to going into the summer still knowing, again, it wasn't his final decision. It was a Bill Zito final decision, but he was part of that brain trust. They're used to being a little bit uncomfortable, if that's the right word, if they're uncomfortable at all. They're used to going a couple of weeks into the offseason and saying, okay, we got to make a decision here, and they take their big swing. So I don't know if there's going to be a big swing for a goaltender. I don't know necessarily that there's going to be a big swing for a top six forward. I'm not saying there won't be. I'm saying I know that they've been lurking. I know that I didn't know that this was coming. I knew that something quote unquote fun was going to happen. I had a source tell me, but they didn't divulge exactly what it was, and ultimately this wound up being what it was. Um, but certainly, I do think the Devils know that they need a goaltender and a top six center. Don't know that they know they can do both, but I think one more thing at least is coming in terms of the forward group or a goaltender. And I would lean it's the goaltender. I just don't. I don't know that Sonny Mehta is comfortable going into next season claiming that he wants to, or that the Devils have the or on the precipice of winning and winning soon. He could be right, and maybe Dawes will surprise us all. I mean, I've liked what I've seen from him at the NHL level. Do I necessarily trust that it will happen in a bigger sample? I'm not sure. I think it's too much of a question mark. But Jake Allen was excellent, or has been an excellent goaltender for the Devils in his tenure. He's a guy that they've leaned on for sure. Can you have him be the 1A and Dawes be the 1B? It's a tough call. If you're asking me, I would say it's probably not going to be Dawes and Allen going into next season. We will see. But we're here to talk about Barrett Hayton, and we'll see what the rest of the summer brings. Like I said, they're plenty. Sonny Mehta is plenty okay going into the coming days, knowing that he still has stuff to do, and maybe he'll strike when nobody's expecting it, right? Just like I said, part of the brain trust that, made the Matthew Tkachuk trade happen in mid-July. Nobody saw it coming, and it was a whopper. So we'll see what happens. But again, Sonny made a big swing today. You want to call it a medium swing, go for it. But it's a swing no less. He's not making friends, and he's making those calculated decisions that he said that he was going to make. So it's very interesting. Now, let's quickly also talk about Barrett Hayton, the player. So 10 goals, 25 points in 67 games last year. Not his best season, right? That's a down year from the year prior when he scored 20 goals and 46 points. However, the analytics love Barrett Hayton, right? He's a top percentile player in terms of even strength offense and even strength defense. So, the analytics suggest he's a really good two-way player. And one of the things that I like about him is that he's really good in the faceoff dot, 52.6% last season, the year prior, 54.1%. So that's something that certainly helps the Devils. We know Jack Hughes isn't the best center in terms of being in the faceoff dot. So that's encouraging. It's really his finishing. He had 3% finishing last year. It's not the best, but there's reason to believe that a bounce back is coming, right? He creates chances well. He just didn't produce. That sounds like a regression to the mean candidate for me. So again, calculated decisions, right? His offensive creation is good. His defensive metrics are good. His finishing was poor. It sounds like he just needs to work on the finishing, and he should regress back to the mean. Now, can you get 20 goals and 46 points out of Barrett Hayton on the third line? Certainly you'll take that behind a healthy Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier in a full 82 game season, right? Let's just say, for argument's sake, Jack Hughes has a full healthy season. Let's call it 75 games Well, what did he do the last time he had, 70 plus games under his belt? He scored 99 points and 45 goals. Let's say it's 40 goals from Jack Hughes next year. Let's say Nico Hischier regresses to the mean and he scores 35 goals next year, and you get 20 goals from Barrett Hayton as your one, two, three. I mean, you're cooking it with your center depth there. Let's take it one step further. Cody Glass, a near 20 goal scorer last year. I mean, it's possible he's going to be a fourth liner. Will he have the minutes to do it? I'm not sure, but we already know he's an elite defensive center. Again, we're looking at some pretty excellent center depth here. If Sonny Mehta pulls this off with Barrett Hayton, I really like this move here. It just screams analytical darling, and I think the results on the ice will translate. Um, I think you guys are all gonna like this if they pull it off too. And again, if you go back to 10 minutes back into the show, you'll hear why I said I think it's really possible that they do this. This is really forcing the Mammoth's hand, and we'll see what the trickle effect is too here, right? Does Dawson Mercer remain? What other moves do they make after they do this, right? Because one of the things I think in my mind is if the Devils know that they have Evan Rodriguez, who is, a utility guy and has played a lot of the wing lately. Well, Dawson Mercer is expendable, and he's young enough and has the value enough on the market to be appealing to another team to make another bigger move. So there's a lot to digest here. Really smart, calculated move by Sonny Mehta. 7 days the Mammoth have to decide if they're going to do it. So we'll be sitting on our hands for a little while. They could decide, sooner and just say we're not going to do it. Maybe we'll know before then, but we'll know within 7 days. We'll see what happens. But I want to get to your guys' comments now. And if I haven't stated already, guys, just please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. You have to be subscribed to, take part in the chat anyway. And we want to hear from you. So certainly, make sure you're subscribed, hit the like, and take part in the chat here. But we got looks like a lot of comments. We have 15 starred comments here from producer Sean. So you guys have opinions, you guys have thoughts. Let's talk. Let's have some fun with this. So Sean, let's bring up the first one. What do we got here? Okay, I'm gonna say legacy. That's the only word I could figure out quickly in that name. We're gonna go with legacy. Sonny is showcasing calculated moves and wasting no time wasted. I love to see it, and I agree with you. This is Sonny Mehta as advertised. He said exactly what he was gonna do. I'm gonna make smart decisions. I'm gonna make calculated decisions. And this has smart calculated decision written all over it. He knew exactly the cap hit that he needed to offer. He knew what the Mammoth weren't going to have in order to make it happen. And he really put them in a bind. Not only did he do that, he didn't just pick a random player and say, "Oh, I think that this is going to be, something that puts Utah in a bind." No, this player also makes the Devils a better team if he signs. So, or if they don't match the offer, if he is a member of the Devils. So, this is a great move. I fully agree with you. Smart, calculated, and like you said, waste no time. I mean, the last time we heard about an offer sheet a couple of years ago with the Blues, it was August. That was fun. Don't get me wrong, right? Like nobody. I think I was on the beach. Nobody was expecting that, right? But nonetheless, comes through, and it was fun. No, Sonny Mehta wanted to get down to business. He wanted it to happen right away, and he made it happen on July 1st. His first day as a GM full time in free agency. It's a bold move. It's a bold swing. You think he's making friends now? No, he's not. He's not. He's kind of making an enemy, but he's not scared of it. And more power to him. You want to see more things like this. This is called aggressive but calculated, smart managing. And you like this kind of thing. You certainly do. And this is new. This is new for Devils fans. First offer sheet in Devils history. You'd love to see it. Thank you for the comment. Let's get to the next one. We got Exupamaki. Would be a nice pickup. A little pricey, but nonetheless good role player. Now, where is Jack's winger? I think this is, for that second part of that question, a stepping stone, right? If this happens, now we have the capability to move someone like Dawson Mercer, maybe put a package together. And if it's not a winger for Jack, it's a goaltender. We'll see what that looks like. I know Frederick Anderson just signed with the Oilers, so he's not going to be available on the market. We saw all those other goaltenders go already today. It was Sergei Bobrovsky went to the Maple Leafs, so he's not going to be somebody that the Devils bring in, and probably better off because you look at the term and the cap hit, and just not something that I don't think Sonny Mehta would do. Um, but nonetheless, yeah, I think this is a stepping stone. This is one domino that's going to lead to the next one. I don't think it's too pricey though. I think it's bang on. I do, and if anything, I think it's actually maybe there's a little bit undervalued there for Barrett Hayton. A lot of models, more models than not, say he's at least a $5 million player. He comes in just under that. In this rising cap, I like it a lot. So we'll see what happens. But no less, this is a really good player to execute this move on, and if they pull it off, it'll be a great addition. Thank you for the comment. Let's get to the next. Walt BTB says the offer sheet is evidence of the poker player in Sonny. It's a sneaky gamble that could really pay off, and I think that that's excellent analysis there. Um, and as advertised, like I said, this is a guy who came in. He told us what he was going to do, and still didn't show his cards. That's what's so interesting to me, and that's where I think this analogy works so well, is that he literally told us what he was going to do, and none of us saw it coming. When somebody said to me today, "Well, we're going to do something really fun," and I couldn't figure out what that was, that's the bluff that Sonny Mehta can put up and not show his hand, and I just think it's excellent. I don't love it as a reporter because I'm trying to figure these things out, but ultimately, he pulls it off, at least for now. And I don't know if that anybody else saw it coming too. Like, did the Utah Mammoth see this coming? I mean, I don't think so. The reason why they probably pulled out of the deal was probably because they were going to try and figure something out with him. Did they now also go and trade for Vincent Trocheck and make those other moves, knowing that maybe Barrett Hayton is gone? That's another thing to digest here. So the fact that Sonny didn't show his hand and made this move and was sly about it, yeah, works real well in his favor. So I agree with the assessment. I think it's a good one, and thank you for the comment. Let's get to the next one. Dabble says, I also like the message this sends to the players on the team. It's been too cushy with Fitz. Everyone gets an NTC. No one is ever under threat of losing a job. Not anymore. Perform or you will be moved. I don't know that the offer sheet says that. I think the offer sheet says more like we're going to be aggressive in getting what we want. But there could be like a sub message there that says like, look, we're going to be aggressive in getting what we want. And if you're not going to move forward with us, we're going to be aggressive in figuring out how to get you out, which is what we did with Jacob Markstrom, right? So um, that's what I think, the thought process is there for Sonny Mehta, and he went about the Tom Fitzgerald's moves this summer, and he just basically undid them all. He basically said, like, these things aren't going to work for me. These are not part of my calculated models. These are not the decisions I would have made, and he undid them all. Simone Nemitz, he's gone, right? 5 first-round picks in the next 3 years now the Devils have to use in terms of trade value. They also have, newfound depth with Rodriguez and Jesper Boquist in exchange for Jacob Markstrom, who, look, is he potentially going to bounce back with the Florida Panthers? I would not doubt it. Why? Because their defense is way better than the Devils is, right? But there is also the chance that the Devils defense takes a step forward this year. Last year was a bad year all around. The puck movement was awful. They could not keep pucks out of their own end. Is it even done? Is the blue line even finished? There's a chance that changes happen there too. The summer, again, this is July 1. There's a long summer ahead. So ultimately, they get rid of Jacob Markstrom. He might do better with the better defense that is the Florida Panthers. However, I do expect the Devils take a step forward this upcoming season on their blue line, and whoever's in net for them, hopefully they have an easier time than Markstrom did last year, because certainly it was not, it wasn't on the defense that Markstrom was as bad as he was, but certainly, it was like oil and vinegar. It was like oil and water. Sorry, oil and vinegar works, but oil and water doesn't. It was like oil and water where, Markstrom wasn't playing well. The defense wasn't playing well. Nobody was helping each other. The whole point of getting Jacob Markstrom was to have him, make those high danger saves, right? That was like the thing that he was most good at before they acquired him, and that's why they got him. And he didn't make any danger saves, low danger, medium danger, high danger. Like none of the saves were happening. He was out like well above the 50th percentile of all of those um, shot locations. So it just was a bad fit. Jacob Markstrom, again, he was good when he was good. He was awful when he was awful. And so if he goes to the Florida Panthers and he succeeds there, that's a circumstantial thing, right? If you see that and you say to yourself, "Man, I wish he would have did this with the Devils," it just wasn't going to happen. So they're going to need a different goaltender, and it's still going to be a good move because they got the depth that they needed in the forward group. So, but like you said, this summer so far has been we're going to be aggressive in doing what we need to do to get who we want. We're going to be aggressive in making sure we get back who we want to keep, i.e., Gritsuk and Hischier. Didn't even let them get past July 1. All of these things are happening because Sonny Mitt is not letting them slip through the cracks. And you love to see the aggressive approach. And we should have probably had a better idea that this was going to happen when he cleaned house a little bit. You know, there were a lot of changes to the front office. There were a lot of changes to the coaching staff, and that's a joint decision with Sheldon Keefe. But ultimately, you know, he had say in that, and he made sure that there were changes there. And he does the same thing here. You know, this Devils team is going to look the same, but different. You know, Hayton is a big addition. Rodriguez is a big addition. We'll see what happens in net, and we'll see if they're even done adding in the forward group or on the blue line. There's a lot left to be said this summer, I think. And again, I just don't think that this is the last thing that they're going to do. So thank you for the comment. Let's get to the next one. Joe Will says 7 million is still a good amount of money, especially if they move Nason too. Yeah, so I believe you're talking about how much they have left after signing Barrett Hayton. I think it's a little more than that, actually. I think it's like 7.5 almost. Yeah, a little more than 7.5. So almost closer to 8 million, really. And if they get rid of a guy like Stefan Nason, if they get rid of a guy, maybe Nick Bukestad, who I mean, does Sonny Mehta think Nick Bukestad fits? Maybe he does. I don't know his models. Yeah, there could be more money to be had here. Certainly, there are definitely ways to get rid of these players, and even if he doesn't, I mean, those are good depth players, but certainly $7 million to work with, whoever is left on the free agent market. I mean, I don't even know how many free agents are even out there that are, I don't know, available, that are even worth it right now. I mean, not looking at the RFA market, right? We're just looking at the UFA market. I mean, we know we're not getting, Alexander Ovechkin to the Devils. We know we're not getting John Carlson to the Devils. Those guys are probably going to somewhere south or staying with Washington. Alex Ovechkin's not going anywhere if he stays. But Patrick Kane's still out there. That's kind of interesting. Claude Giroux is out there. He's probably going to go back to Philly, but that's kind of interesting. I do kind of wonder about Anthony Mantha, although I don't love his health statuses most of the time. Got someone like Vladimir Tarasenko. That's kind of interesting. Eli Tolvanen is pretty interesting to me. So there are still some guys out there who you could see maybe they take a flyer on, but again, with the way things have gone, those are too obvious to me. What are we not thinking about that Sonny Mehta could do? What rabbit out of a hat could he pull like he just did with Barrett Hayton? That's the route I think he'll take. So yeah, having the near $8 million is pretty good to have in his back pocket, and he's not even. I don't think he's even finished. So we'll see what happens. But thank you for the comment. Let's get to the next one. Producer Sean says Tom Fitzgerald could never. Listen, I don't like to, let me say it like this. I had a good relationship with Tom Fitzgerald where him and I could have nice conversations, hockey related or not. He was nice to me and good to me in his time here with the Devils. Do I think that he would have done something like this that Sonny Mehta is doing right now? No, I don't. I do think that this, and I know this is a running joke that, a lot of people say, Sonny Mehta masterclass, or, fill in the blank masterclass. I really do think that this is a Sonny Mehta masterclass. I do. And, something that Jeff Marek always says, I talk to him a lot, and, he says it on his show too. The way of the GM has turned from have you played to can you think? And I think he's right. Look at who just won the Stanley Cup, right? Eric Tulsky. He's a guy that could think, right? Sonny Mehta comes in. Clearly, he's a guy who could think. And I think all these moves, right? We're excited about it now. We'll see how it pans out, right? Listen, we could all be wrong, right? Maybe it doesn't work, but it looks good right now, and there's reason to be optimistic. There's reason to be excited about this. And do I think Tom Fitzgerald would have done something as bold? He didn't give us any reason to believe it. He made a big trade for Timo Meyer back in the day. Some other key signings and stuff, but anything as bold as this, I mean, maybe the Meyer trade is bold given the magnitude of the pieces that moved. But after that, I mean, it was the only thing he did, right? The only thing he did in his tenure that really said, okay, that pushes the needle. This, this is his, this is Sonny Min's first opportunity to push the needle, and he did it. You love what you're seeing. You love what you're seeing from Sonny Mehta. Thank you for the comment, Sean. Let's get to the next. Madison says, was Barrett Hayton the irons in the fire you were referencing? It was one of them. Yeah. I mean, again, like I said, someone had mentioned to me earlier in the day, we're working on something fun, right? And I just couldn't figure out what that was. And this was the thing that was fun. So, yes, this is the irons in the fire I was referencing. I still think that they're, again, a lot of time between now and September, but I would hedge a bet that they're in the goaltending market too. And we'll see about a top six forward. We'll see. But yes, this was one of the things I was referencing from earlier. Thank you for the comment. Walt BTB, again, he says, we need the bottom six to be solid and be able to contribute. Yes, we need someone on the top six to help with the scoring, but this move is equally important. I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. And one of the things I continued to say, last year when the end of the season, the tail end, Sheldon Keefe moved Connor Brown up to the Jack Hughes line, and obviously it worked real well, right? Connor Brown showed a pretty good sample next to him and Bratt. Um, but one of the things I continue to believe is that you want Connor Brown to be in your middle six, more ideally on the third line. And he played really well with Cody Glass and Arseny Gritsyuk. I think that third line was dominant. You want to, hopefully keep that going. But now, I mean, they can certainly keep it going. But the addition of Rodriguez is huge. Jesper Boquist is an excellent fourth liner. He could play third line if they really wanted him to. He played a little bit up and down in the Florida Panthers' lineup, but you have in your bottom six, ideally, Evan Rodriguez, Connor Brown, Cody Glass, Stefan Nason, Nick Bukestad, Jesper Boquist, Lenny Hamanaho, Arseny Gritsyuk. I mean, there are players here that could make a sustainable, successful, heavy on the attack bottom six. Um, and that's why I think that they should still be exploring top six forward options to ensure that Connor Brown plays lower in the lineup. I think he could be a successful second line player, especially next to someone named Jack Hughes. Give me a stick and I could play next to Jack Hughes pretty well. But the fact of the matter is that Connor Brown is ideally in your middle, preferably on your third line. And you have, someone who can finish next to Jack Hughes. So we'll see. But you're right. And, one of the biggest problems the Devils had for a long time and had last season was the depth scoring. And when the depth scoring wasn't going and when the top six scoring wasn't going, no one was scoring. It was just for no reason should a team with this much firepower not be scoring as many goals as they were a few seasons ago. They dropped from something like 3.5 goals per game 2 seasons ago to 2.7 something this season. I mean, it was really, really a bad drop off. And you want to see them be able to creep back up to that, 3.5 mark. And I think they can. I think they certainly can. And it's a good start with the depth. I cannot emphasize enough how big of an addition Evan Rodriguez is going to be to this team. I really think that he is going to be one of the more, when we reflect on this summer, one of the more underrated things is going to be not just offloading Jacob Markstrom, but also bringing in Evan Rodriguez. I think it was a really good addition. Thank you for the comment. Let's get to the next. Jorge says center keeps them going the past years. Center keeps them going the past years. I think you're talking about the center depth keeps them going. I think that the center depth has been an issue if I'm not mistaken, right? Sean, you tell me if I'm interpreting this wrong in the private chat, but I think that Jorge is saying the centers keep them going in previous years. I think it's been an issue. I think that the issue for the Devils has been the lack of center depth. Now, last year was pretty good, right? Because Cody Glass as a third line center was really strong. But the fourth line center position, who was there? Sometimes it was Paul Cotter. They got Nick Bukestad, and it was just a rotation of players. Jack Hughes gets hurt, so now who's moving up in the lineup, right? So the center depth has been actually an issue in my mind. Um, but let's see. Sean says he's saying centers are what's supposed to keep them going. Oh, maybe that's what he's saying. Centers are supposed to be what keeps them going. And if that's what you're saying, Jorge, then I think I agree with that for sure. And the reason why this is so good is because, again, the Devils now have a number of players. Let's just say, for argument's sake, Dawson Mercer remains with the Devils. He could play center. Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, Evan Rodriguez could play center. Cody Glass could play center. Nick Bukestad, Jesper Boquist. Like, this is center depth. This is the kind of depth that you need to be successful. So if you're saying centers are what keeps teams that are successful going in previous years, you're right. And now they have that. They hadn't had that in a long time. Jack Hughes goes down a couple of years ago, and all of a sudden Eric Holla is your second line center. That's a problem, right? Nothing against Eric Holla. He's a fine role player, but he's not a second line center, right? Nico Hischier gets bumped up to 1C, Eric Holla 2C. That's an issue, right? So now all of a sudden the center depth looks real strong. You like to see it. And again, this is what translates to wins, right? You need players that can go out and play every night. Next man up. Who's going to step up if someone goes down? That's what depth is all about. And it's also about our top guys aren't going tonight. They're healthy, but they're just not going. Oh, well, look at that 3-point game from Evan Rodriguez, who, by the way, is also a defensive stalwart and, helped prevent 2 goals while on the ice. Again, this is depth. And a guy like Evan Rodriguez is going to be huge for this team. Thanks for the comment. Let's get to the next one. Why don't they try for Levi? He went for a third rounder only. The thing is, I understand wanting to go after a guy like Devin Levi, maybe even someone like Sebastian Kosa who went to Utah. The thing for me is that those are largely unproven goaltenders, right? They have very little sample sizes in the NHL, and we just don't know if they're going to pan out. Um, Whereas, I think Sonny instead looks for someone who has been in the league a little while, and they have good analytics to support that they are going to have sustained success in the league. Now, does that mean that he won't take a chance on somebody? No, I think that's part of his game too. But in the goaltending department, I mean, I think that's one of those positions where you need to be a little bit more sure as opposed to taking a gamble. Um, I I guess you could say that the Devils do have the wherewithal to lean on Jake Allen if they need to if something doesn't work out. Because it's true, that the Devils have leaned on him the past 2 seasons in certain spots, and he's largely been a good return for them. Um, but again, I just think that, a guy like Levi is just not proven enough. A guy like maybe a Sebastian Kosa is not proven enough. And you want somebody who's been there, done that, and, again, is hitting the points on the model that Sonny Mehta looks for. And perhaps Devin Levi is just not that guy. So I know public models, say that this guy could be, the next big thing. We just don't know. There's a reason why Buffalo has like 3 or 4 goaltenders that they were using ahead of him. And the fact of the matter is that that's just not a risk that Sonny Mehta was willing to take. And he's willing to take risks, but that doesn't seem like it was one of them. So thanks for the comment. Let's go to the next. It looks like Walt is back. Says lots of games last season where New Jersey dominated were simply lost because of the lack of goal support, not because of goaltending. That's true. There were a lot of games where it didn't matter if Jacob Markstrom gave up 4 goals because the Devils scored 0. And you could also argue that maybe the Devils became deflated and didn't play better in front of him because they kind of knew like, okay, it's another night for Markstrom where he gives up a bunch, and what's the point? And they're just not playing well in front of him. Did they play better in front of Jake Allen because they were more motivated, knowing they were going to have a better goaltender? Maybe these things are true, but the fact of the matter is you can't win if you don't score goals. So 100%, the goal scoring was a problem. It was the lowest it's been in I think 5 or 6 seasons at 2.74 goals per game last season. That's not going to cut it, especially not on a team that has star players in Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, whether you like it or not, Timo Meyer, Jesper Bratt, like these are stars. Dougie Hamilton, all right? Is he as much of a star as he used to be? No. But look at the second half of the season after they scratched him and how well he played. He's a guy who can bring it on offense. He could score 20 plus goals on the blue line, and he is not far removed from a 75-point season, 74-point season, whatever it was. He is a star, right? Luke Hughes is going to be, they think he's going to be a star. There are too many good players on this team to only score 2.74 goals per game. And it had a lot to do with depth. It had a lot to do with who was going to step up or lack thereof, right? And they just didn't have the horses. And now you're seeing Sonny Mehta is making sure we have the horses. So good on him addressing the depth. Good on him identifying that Jacob Markstrom was not part of the solution, acquiring said depth. And, again, he goes out today, he gets a guy like Riley Tuft, who that was interesting to me. Riley Tuft, 28-year-old winger, scored 32 goals for the Providence Bruins last year. I believe he was second most point producer on the Providence Bruins. I think he was one of the top goal scorers in the AHL. It's a sneaky depth addition there, right? Guy clearly knows how to score goals. Um, the AHL is no pushover. Is it the NHL? No. But to score 32 goals in the NHL, I mean, look, if you get, let's say you get him on recall for, I don't know, 15 games and you get 5 or 6 goals out of him, you take that. You certainly take that. So thank you for the question. Thank you for the comment. Let's get to the next. Freestyle says, in reality, Hayton could open up the ability to use Mercer or other forwards to reel in some top wingers. And I agree with that. A while ago, I don't know that they'll have interest anymore. And it's a new regime. So I would probably hedge a bet that it's changed. But I know that, the Nashville Predators coveted a guy like Dawson Mercer a couple seasons ago. And look, he's a young guy, former first round pick, two-way responsible player. He penalty kills, he forechecks well. Does he show up on offense when you want him to? Not always. Would he have maybe a different role for a different team? Like one of the things that always gets me is when a player moves on to another team, fans look at that player and say, you know, why didn't he do this for the Devils? It's circumstantial most of the time, right? Who's driving the play in New Jersey? It's always going to be Jack Hughes. It's always going to be Jesper Bratt. It's always going to be Timo Meyer. It's always going to be, they want it to be Luke Hughes, right? If he's not getting the puck touches to drive the play, then he's just going to be a support player. Maybe Dawson Mercer needs a different role. Maybe Dawson Mercer needs some more stability, right? Because he does move up from, he moves from a winger on the Nico Hischier line to, oh, someone's hurt. I need to play center today. And maybe he just doesn't have that stability, right? So I do think that other teams look at Dawson Mercer and see a valuable player in him. He's still young enough, and he has the ceiling to be, a good middle six, top six, maybe a lower end top six player. And I agree that if they bring Hayton in, that gives the Devils the opportunity to comfortably move on from Dawson Mercer and $4 million off their books if you know they move him. It's probably not going to be just to offset the money though. It'll probably be for somebody in return. So maybe it's a package. We'll see what that looks like. But yeah, I would think that that's at least something that's on the mind of the Devils GM. Thank you for the comment. Let's get to the next. Madison's back and she says, do you think there's any possibility of Nyes to New Jersey if New Jersey gets Hayton and moves Mercer or something? I just know that they were looking for a top six winger, but I mean, they also need a goalie. And yeah, I mean, the thing for me with Nyes is the former regime in Toronto was okay with moving him. The new regime in Toronto, I think, looks at him and says, he's a guy that's part of the solution. I mean, he's only 24 years old, and he was 2 seasons away, or removed, I should say, from scoring 30 goals, 60 points. Last year was not good for anyone in Toronto, similarly to the Devils, right? It's not a coincidence when the entire team isn't producing as well as they were in the season previous that all these players have off years, right? That's what Nyes was going through last year, but he's still just 24 years old. The word is it's going to take a monster offer for a Matthew Nyes to be pried from Toronto. Do I think the Devils would like to get a Matthew Nyes? I do. Do I think that they want to pay the price it's going to take? I don't know that that's the case. So I know they've, inquired at least once, asked about the price, what will it take? But once they learned, I don't know that it really went too much further. And now, yeah, you're right. They need a goaltender. That's probably going to be the top priority from here on. And if it's not, if they do go into, the 25-26 season with a tandem of Allen and Dawes, look, I'd be shocked. But then that would say to me that they need to buff up the blue line because I don't know that this blue line currently is going to cut it. So we'll see what happens. But I would lean, yeah, they're looking more probably towards a goaltender at this point. Are they not looking at a top six forward? I wouldn't say that. Look, Sonny has figured out how to be creative, and I wouldn't put anything past him. It wasn't the biggest day in terms of transactions. Again, a couple little things, and then some house cleaning and maintenance, making sure it's Gritsik and Hischier were re-signed. But then he comes out swinging with an offer sheet in Barrett Hayton. So I do think that he's creative. He figures out different opportunities and backdoor ways to make things happen, and I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe him pull off both. Am I saying he will? No, but certainly let's start with the goaltender and then we'll go from there. But thank you for the question. Let's move on to the next. We've got a lot of questions today, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here. And again, if I haven't said so already, please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those notifications, by the way, for whenever we post something new or we're going live again. So I do think, by the way, Sonny Mehta will talk tomorrow. I think we'll find out for sure. But I would hedge a bet that he will, and we might go live again after he speaks. We'll see what he has to say. But next question is from Husky, who says, "Our GM Mehta big swing today. I bet Utah is hating on Sonny." That's very funny. I bet Utah is hating, as in Barrett Hayton, on Sonny right now. Good play on words. And like I said, this is not this is not making Sonny Mehta any friends in those GM group chats. Certainly Utah might be going after him and saying, "What is this all about?" At the GM meetings, maybe he's going to get some glares and some eyes at going his way. But listen, he'll just put his cards up and he just won't look. He'll just stay focused. He'll keep his brim low. He'll focus on the hand that he's playing, and he'll, I think, win. That's what it is. I think I really do. I have a feeling that he's gonna win, in this situation that he's created for himself right now. So I mean, we'll see. There's no guarantees, but it's a smart, calculated move. Exactly what he said he wanted to do. Um, the Dallas Stars just tweeted back where he belongs, and I thought, did they just re-sign Jason Robertson? No, it's Joel Kiviranta. Weird way to tweet something. But thank you for the question, Husky, and let's move on to the next. We have at Dogzilla, who says, "James, do you think that he's moving one of the defensemen like Siegs, Dillon, or Kovacevic? Could one of these assets be moved in a larger trade? Sonny definitely needs to address top six wing." Again, a lot of people have pointed out the number of defensemen or the number of players at a certain position that he's brought in, right? So there are, let's see, uh, we have Dougie, Luke, Brett, Brendan, Jonathan. We have more defensemen on the roster right now than you would probably think they could continue to roster. Um, it looks like they do have a bit of an abundance on the blue line right now, and that's not to mention a guy like Seamus Casey, who's down in the AHL. That's not to mention a guy like, I kind of wonder about Ethan Edwards. Let's not forget about him, who impressed Sheldon Keefe last fall. He almost made the roster. Um, what's Anton Silyev going to do? Michael Dion, that's another player I know that the organization likes really well. I mean, let's not forget that there are viable defensemen in the pipeline right now. There are a number of defensemen on the blue line that make you wonder, is somebody on their way out? Let's not forget Brendan Dillon's trade protection downgrades. It is now, I wrote this morning. It's now a 10-team trade list. Oh, sorry, 10-team no trade list. That's different. So he can submit a list of 10 teams he won't go to, giving Sonny Mehta the opportunity to move him to 22 other teams. He had full no trade protection before today. It's a pretty big deal. Opens up, the opportunity to make 22 different kinds of trades if he needs. So we'll see. We'll see. I know a lot of people are talking about Jonathan Kovacevic. Is it the best contract that Tom Fitzgerald signed? No, it's not. Do I think that he's the player he was at the end of last season? No, I mean, he just came off a major knee surgery. Do I think he'll be a little bit better? I think he's a good regression candidate, a regression to the mean candidate. You got to remember, him and Siegenthal are one of the best shutdown pairings 2 seasons ago. That major knee surgery that kept him out for half the year. It was asking a lot of him to come back into the lineup and to, all of a sudden just be like he was there for training camp and he had a full off season to train. Like, no, he was playing catch up all year. This is a big summer for Jonathan Kovacevic, right? He's going to, train this summer. He's going to get comfortable with his knee. Um, he's not recovering, he's training. Whereas last summer he was recovering and he was still recovering in the season. So next year will be a big year for Jonathan Kovacevic. And if he doesn't perform, right, if he's not as good as he was in year one, well, then his trade protection downgrades in July 1st, 2027 to a 10-team no trade list. So again, 22 teams that Sonny Mehta could find a partner for. We'll see what happens. But yeah, a lot of defensemen on the blue line right now, and they even have some depth. So you do wonder, could somebody be on the move? We'll see. I wouldn't put it. I would put nothing past Sonny Mehta. I wouldn't. I wouldn't. Thanks for the comment. Thanks for the question. Let's move on to the next. At Steve says Sonny brought his lunchbox, broom, and mop, and a bucket to clean up Fitz's mess. Still plenty of time before the regular season starts, and that's exactly right. I know we all get excited July 1st. It felt like a trade deadline today because of the weak free agent class and, how many players wanted to potentially be traded. And, there were a lot of trades today. It felt like a trade deadline. But ultimately, again, the mistakes that if you want to call them mistakes that Tom Fitzgerald made before he was ultimately, or I shouldn't say fired, they parted ways, but he was fired. The mistakes that Tom Fitzgerald made, Sonny Mehta's cleaning them up. Jacob Markstrom's gone. Simone Nemeth is gone. And look, will they do well with their new teams? Maybe. They weren't going to do well in New Jersey. And so Sonny Mehta is identifying those players and saying, you don't have a future here. Let's move on. And he's bringing in players that, he's had success with himself before, right? Again, Rodriguez, Boquist. He's identified Barrett Hayton as a potential guy who he could have success with. So yeah, it's good work here. It's good work here. On paper. Let's see what happens on the ice, but it's good work here on paper. And he's certainly cleaning up that Fitzgerald mess. Thank you for the comment. Let's get to a few more here before we wrap up the show. Just want to say thank you again for being here on a late Wednesday night, but we're here. We're having fun. We're enjoying the conversation. The chat's flowing. This is great, and thank you for being here at Devil's Rink Report. At Devil Heaven 77 says, "I want diamonds in the rough. Same result, a lot less money. Still win now for sure." That's kind of why I'm wondering about a guy like Riley Tuft or the defenseman that they signed today. Again, I'm gonna butcher his name because I haven't practiced how to say it. I do this, by the way. I do practice how to say these things. Vladislav Kolyachunuk. I think I kind of nailed it that time. Vladislav Kolyachunuk. He's a player who has really good analytics in terms of a two-way defenseman. Good puck transition numbers. Has had mostly minutes in the AHL though. He's had a cup of coffee in the NHL. Couple games here and there. I don't know that he has the best numbers in the NHL. Again, another player I'm gonna have to look more into. But I think in terms of total games, he's played 87, 5 goals, 17 points in total. So again, diamond in the rough, probably a Utica guy, but again, a sneaky ad that if he is a recall, can seamlessly transition from the AHL to the NHL game and fill a role and play the style the Devils want to play next season. So we might have some diamonds in the rough here. Tuft is an interesting one. Kolya Chanok. I keep having to read it. I can't even remember it off the top of my head. Kolya Chanok might be an underrated addition. Might be a diamond in the rough. We'll see what we get from those guys. But certainly I do think look Barrett Hayton. He might be a diamond in the rough. Again, 10 goals last season, 25 points. What happens if he pops this year with the Devils for 23 goals? I think we'll all be ecstatic to see that. That's certainly going to signal that the Devils had a successful season if Barrett Hayton scores 23 goals next year. Let's see what happens. It's not out of the realm of possibility. He scored 20 goals 2 seasons ago. We'll see what happens. Thanks for the comment. Let's get to the next. I think we got a lot more here. Wow. Uh, RL_sin says, do you think he did this offer sheet only because he has another trade where one or two of the other five guys who can play third line center, or did he just want a sixth third 3C? I don't think he just wanted a sixth 3C to be like, here's the depth that we've needed. I think that two things can be true at the same time. I think he wants the depth. But I think that there are other things in his back pocket. I think that he is trying to, again, masterclass this summer. He's identified Barrett Hayton as a proper third line center, I think. We'll see if that's where he's deployed, but I think that that's something he's identified, which is why he extended the offer sheet. I think that he's also identified that if he can reel him in, he has more ammunition in terms of assets to make other moves. I think that those two things can be true at the same time. So, does he want the depth? Certainly. Does he think that it's also going to help him make other moves elsewhere? I do. I do. I don't think this is random. I don't think he just looked at a player and said, "Oh, I think he's good. He should play for my team." I think that there are probably other things that are going to stem from this. And if there's not, then nonetheless, they just get a good player. We'll see. Thanks for the question. Let's go to the next. Dogzilla is back and says it will be incredible to see if Grits can crack the top six. Bolstering bottom six leaves only so many spots. And that's one of the things I said last year, just watching his game develop. I truly think that Gritsik will, and if it's not this year, at least in the near future in his career, in terms of, how long he'll play in the NHL, I think he's a top six forward at some point. He just does everything right. He's always in the right position. He is defensively responsible, and those are really good qualities to have as a top six forward. But ultimately, I mean, he creates chances out there, whether it's for himself or for his line mates. He's a really useful player. He's a borderline role player, borderline play driver, and the thing that's going to set Arseny Gricic over the top to become a top six player and perhaps full time is if he can become that play driver. Now, does that mean he can't become a top six complement to someone like Jack Hughes? No, I think he could. But I think that ultimately he just has to find that point in his game where he can full time play in the top six on a line with someone like Jack Hughes. I don't know that. I mean, he could still play on a line with Nico Hischier, but that line is pretty set with someone like Timo Meier there. And if Dawson Mercer comes back, no, it's not ideal that Dawson Mercer is in the top six and only scoring goals and not the most ideal of times, right? I do feel like Dawson Mercer has not scored a significant goal in a long time. But, again, let's just say he comes back. I mean, that line plays well together, at least defensively. They're constantly driving play. They're one of the best expected goals lines in the league. So, we'll see. It's going to be a tough top six to crack if they bring in someone new and Dawson Mercer remains. But I do think that Arseny Gricic should have the opportunity to show that he can hack it in the top six, because you're looking at a guy who might, improve from what he scored 13 goals this year to like immediately 25 next to Jack Hughes. Try him out on the power play. I mean, he's got a lethal shot. So yeah, we'll see. Grits in the top six would be interesting. That means that something went really right for him in his development this summer. So thanks for the comment. Let's get to the next. RL underscore sin is back and says, I want Mercer to stay with New Jersey this year with all of the new center depth. Obviously, if he has to go in a trade for someone like Robertson or Larkin, Nyes, or Marchenko, it is what it is, but I don't want him gone like some New Jersey Devils fans. And I could understand that too, because he's one of those guys who, you see him out there late in games, you see him out there on the penalty kill, and you say to yourself, okay, the Devils have a chance to keep the puck out of the net here. My problem with Dawson Mercer is that, like I said earlier, I haven't seen him score a significant goal in a long time. There's no goal that comes to mind for me that I can remember off the top of my head that I can say that was a big moment for him. It doesn't really happen very often with Dawson Mercer, and that's my biggest problem with him is that there are a lot of moments where you could use something like that and you just don't get it from him. Great forechecker, great defensive forward, great on the penalty kill, but if you're not going to bring the offense, if you're not going to score meaningful goals, you shouldn't be in the top six. So that's my biggest problem with him. But if they can use him to get someone like one of the players that you said, yeah, you do that all day. Within reason, but yeah, you do that all day. Thanks for the comment. Let's get to the next. We got about four left here, and then we're going to wrap up. We've gone an hour, guys. I didn't think we were even going to go this long. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for participating. It's been fun. At Devil Heaven 77 says also James Boquist's game has really ramped up. So I spoke to Jesper Boquist today, and I said, before you left, this is where the work my balls off comment came from. I asked him, I said, what do you have to do this summer to just improve your game? This was the literal summer he left for. I believe it was Florida. I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember if he made another stop, but um, oh, it was Boston. He went to Boston. He said, I got to work my balls off. That was the comment. And, I thought that was hilarious, but also at the same time, he meant it, and he did. He certainly did. He turned into a really good two-way player. He's not going to, you know, impress you with these incredible offensive abilities, but in a role where he needs to be a good forechecker and push the puck up the ice and ensure that the puck stays out of his own net, he's going to do that. Yeah, he's going to do that, and he showed with the Florida Panthers, just how reliable he can be. He played up and down the lineup. I think that at one point when the Panthers were making their run and winning games, he was like in the top six on the wing because they needed him to be for injury purposes, and he still played well. So I'm encouraged by the development of Jesper Boquist away from the Devils. And I think that, him going out and having that experience and coming back to New Jersey to provide them with the necessary depth that they need is going to be a big win for the Devils this year. I do think that. So we'll see what happens. But thanks for the comment. Manny's back. Sorry, no, Walt is back, and he says many of these guys like Tuft are likely to remain as AHL players. The better your AHL team is, the better you can develop your future NHLers. Can't neglect Utica when trying to build your future. That's a very good point, right? Like you don't want to just stash Seamus Casey down in the AHL and just let him play there and hope that he figures it out on his own. A guy like Shane LaChance, who I think has legitimate NHL upside, in like a bottom six role, but I think he has legitimate NHL upside. You want to see him develop, right? Lenny Hamanaho was like kind of like an outlier. He developed on his own in spite of how well the team was performing or not performing in the AHL. So you don't want to see that happen to guys like Seamus Casey and Mesalovsky. So these are guys you want to see develop well. And so bringing in a guy like Tuft is important. Bringing in the defenseman they brought in today is important. And they bring back McLaughlin. They bring back Perrant because they've been good. They've been good AHL soldiers. They have been. And McLaughlin showed a little bit of snarl. He showed a little bit of snarl in the NHL. End of the season, playing in the NHL for I think the first time in a while, if not the first time. I don't remember off the top of my head, but trying to prove himself. I think McLaughlin is a good AHL player. I think he's a good call up if they need him. But it's certainly having these guys that they signed today to, ensure that Utica doesn't go like 0 for 18 in their first 18 games like they did last season. You don't want to see that happen. It's not the mark of a good organization. If you look at the Charlotte Checkers, who is the Hurricanes affiliate, they played real well this season. You know, the Providence Bruins, they're always good. Hershey Bears, they're always good, right? You want to see your AHL teams playing well too, because that means your organization is aligned. And if they're not, then you have a problem. And I think Sonny Mehta has realized that and has identified that as an issue in the Devils organization. So that's kind of also, a nod to the issue with the depth in New Jersey. You know, when your AHL team is not playing as well as they should be, they're not going to do well when they're called up either. So certainly, it's a good point. It is a good point. Thank you for the comment. Let's get to the last one here before we wrap up. We have Devil Heaven 77 back says this heat is brutal. I know I'm sitting here in a hoodie right now, but because the AC is pumping in my place. I mean, it's hot outside. It's 90 degrees right now at 9 o'clock at night, 9:15 at night. Brutal. Brutal. Producer Sean, when we started the show, was sitting outside, complete psychopath, while we were here at work at our desks. He was outside, if you could believe it. If you've made it this long, an hour and 12 minutes, thank you for being here today. Guys, we were up to like 120 people in here at one point. Appreciate that. Thank you for the love. Thank you for being here. Exciting day today. Free agency. It was, again, wasn't the most eye-popping day in terms of, players coming to New Jersey until the end, right? Barrett Hayton isn't even the most headline player. But the offer sheet is a headline in itself, and for a good player that the Devils can use. That was exciting. That was fun. So thank you for being here with me to react today. Thank you for being here with us at Devils Rink Report. Thank you for liking the video if you have, and if not, please make sure you do so. Thank you for subscribing, and if you haven't, please make sure you do so. Thank you for participating in the chat. If you didn't, make sure you do so next time. And until next time, I think we will potentially, let's see what time Sunday Meta talks tomorrow. Let's see if he gives me anything to write about before I go live tomorrow. And then we'll be in touch with you guys on what time we do go live. I think we will go live if he does talk tomorrow. We're waiting on what he has to say, because then we're going to talk about what his comments were, and how he sees the team, and if he's got anything left in the tank. So we're waiting on him. We'll see what happens. If he talks tomorrow, we'll go live. If he doesn't, we'll let you know when we do. But until next time, guys, thanks for being here.